Welcome to 5 Minutes in the Word, a daily devotional in the Word of God.
Mr. Gary, Jesus, one of his biggest methods of teaching was using parables. And one of the most vivid parables for me, especially growing up on a farm, I can really resonate with is the parable of the sower. Looking at Mark chapter 4. And again, he began to teach beside the sea, and a very large crowd gathered about him, so that he got into the boat and set in it on the sea, and the whole crowd was beside the sea on the land. And he was teaching them many things in parables. And in his teaching he said to them, "Listen, behold, a sower went out to sow, and he sowed, and some seed fell along the path, and the birds came and devoured it. Other seed fell on the rocky ground, where it did not have much soil, and immediately it sprang up, since it had no depth of the soil." In verse 6, "And when the sun rose, it was scorched, and since it had no root, it withered away. Other seed fell among thorns, and the thorns grew up and choked it, and it yielded no grain. And other seeds fell into the good soil and produced grain, growing up and increasing, and yielding 30-fold, and 60-fold, and 100-fold. And he said, He who has ears, let him hear." So, Mr. Gary, I have to ask you this question. Can you describe some people who resonate with this, or with the different types of soil in the modern day?
Okay. Yes, I'm going to backtrack just a little.
Okay.
Parables are interesting because really they serve multiple purposes. One purpose is actually to conceal the truth. And the Lord even said that. And so speaking parables, so that hearing they really won't hear and seeing they really won't see. People that don't want to see, they can look at it and say, that's stupid. That's just an old common. I mean, everybody knows about that, and they can make light of it.
They're just scratching the surface.
That's it. Another is to reveal the truth. And of course, Nathan the prophet used a parable with David the king to reveal the truth to him. And boy, did they ever point a finger at him, And he ended up saying, well, I've sinned. And then the other is to embalm the truth, which is, to me, for those of us that love the Bible, that's the big reason. That is, a parable is something that you can stick in your mind, just like you said. You identify with this. This is something that's familiar in certain ways to you. And so you can latch onto this parable, and it'll always carry some meaning. It's always going to be in your mind. Now, you asked a more specific question. You asked about these people, and maybe first we ought to see what the Lord said about them, because he elaborates on it a little further down, beginning in verse 13, because they've asked him basically about the parable. He says, "Do you not understand this parable? How then will you understand all parables? The sower sows the word." So he's just basically said that the word is the seed that this sower is putting down. "And these are the ones by the wayside where the word is sown. When they hear, Satan comes immediately and takes away the word that was sown in their hearts." And when we talked about concealing the truth, that's those people. And you run into them. I run into them. They're right out there. They're people that just basically think, Christianity is nothing to that. And they just cut it off before you really get a chance to teach them. They cut it off. So then he goes on. And he says, and likewise, these likewise are the ones sown on stony ground, who, when they hear the word, immediately receive it with gladness. And they have no root in themselves, and so endure for a time. Afterward, when tribulation or persecution rises for the word's sake, immediately they stumble. And yes, I've met that kind of person. There are people that, honestly, they probably respond to the gospel more quickly than anybody I ever deal with. I mean, they get it. They respond to it. But the problem is they've not really evaluated, okay, how's this going to impact my life? And when life gets going rough, and particularly rough because, you're a Christian now, and they start bearing down on them, then these people, they may drift away. They may not last. Well, then he goes to another category. He says, now, these are the ones sown among thorns. They're the ones who hear the word, and the cares of this world, the deceitfulness of riches, and the desires for other things entering in choke the word, and it becomes unfruitful. And unfortunately, I think any one of us is capable of being that kind of soil.
Yeah.
That we've got to watch out because, hey, I mean, you like fishing and hunting and probably a bunch of more things. Those two I know immediately that you like, you know, and they're not bad. But if you begin to over-focus on fishing and hunting and under-focus on the Word of God, then you may be lost.
Yeah.
With me, it's not any longer fishing and hunting. I've done that, you know, in my lifetime, and I could have been caught that way, but maybe now it would be, you know, TV, although I don't watch too much of that, or maybe it's technology, or any one of a number of other possibilities are out there. We got to be careful. Any one of us could be the thorny ground seed, if you would. And then the last, but these are the ones sown on good ground, those who hear the word, accept it, and bear fruit, some 30-fold, some 60, and some 100. There are honest people out there, and I'm thankful to say I think really that's where we fall.
Yeah.
I think that's where most people that attend with us and worship with us, I think they're that kind of people. They hear the word of God and they respond to it. Now, they don't all produce the same amount. I don't produce as much as somebody else produces, but we produce because we remain faithful and true, and we grow. Now, interestingly enough, I knew a great soul winner, he died a couple of years ago, that said, isn't it interesting that the Lord portrayed 4 types of soil? And he said, in my experience and all the teaching that he'd done a lot. Mm-hmm. He said, basically, I'm going to see about 1 in 4 obey the gospel.